And now, it's time for learning more about our lives as students, our body as humans, and our future as happy, healthy people. The APU and AUV Podcast Network presents the Student Health and Happiness Podcast with your host, Russell Freeman.
Welcome to the AUV Student Health and Happiness Podcast. I'm Dr. Russell Freeman. I'm a professor of health science and philosophy at American University in Vietnam and a chiropractic physician from the United States. Today, we're taking a closer look at making the transition for student university life. This is part 4 in our series, and our special guest today is Mr. Michael Hayes. Michael, welcome back to the show.
Hey, great to see you again, Russell.
So in parts 1 through 3, we covered all kinds of things, from homesickness to choosing a major to finding the right resources and dealing with your relationships. And now in our final episodes, I'd like to talk about 2 really common problems. They're kind of logistical problems, really. They're structural problems. And one is about financial issues and the other is about housing. So let's start with some typical financial problems for students. One of the common problems faced by all students is not only the cost of tuition, but the pace of inflation of tuition and all those costs that go along with it. And so when you combine these expenses with accommodation and food and supplies, transportation, and textbooks, you have a recipe for a lot of debt, student debt, which becomes a financial problem. So this can also increase the pressure from your parents to excel because they're paying the bill. So other than considering working while studying overseas or anywhere else, how do students deal with financial problems from before they come to school, during, and after?
Well, financing a quality education is not a cheap proposition nowadays, and certainly students here at APU and AUV have, been working with their parents for a number of years while they're students here to, figure out how to pay the bill, the tuition, and all the other attending costs that you mentioned. However, when students are transitioning into university life, when they go from APU over here to AUV, the costs change. And then if they go overseas, the costs can be really quite intimidating. I always tell students, when you see those large numbers, like Boston University was here a few months ago, and the woman said, it costs $85,000 a year to go to Boston University. Well, that may be so, but there's lots of other universities around America, North America, and around the world where you can go to school, get a quality education far more cheaply. And there's always on-campus jobs, there's loans, there's lots of ways to finance the situation. The real question is, how badly do you want to go, and how realistic are your expectations about going? Part-time jobs, scholarships, there's ways to make it all work. It just takes some time and conversation.
How does one educate themselves about the loan structure for student loans?
Well, I always ask students, come and see me. I can do the breakdown and cover the budgets and explain the difference between scholarships and merit awards that students are automatically eligible for based on their GPA. It's a complex situation, and it's not just a once-off conversation. It's a series of conversations about what your needs are, how much you think you can afford, where you want to go, what the potential costs. The transportation issue for international students is a huge one nowadays. And then you've got other issues, that go with it that can be pretty intimidating if it's your first time.
Well, who would someone talk to? I mean, is there a standard job description on a university or a high school campus that as the answer person for this?
Well, on a high school campus like APU, I'm the person that would be the best person to talk to about costs involved. At the university level, particularly like in America, UCLA, there are people on campus that work in the financial aid office that can answer a lot of these questions and help students, create a budget or take up a part-time job. There's a lot of resources available. Again, you just need to ask.
Are student loans available to students that are already in school? For example, let's say my first year, I didn't need a student loan, but my second year I did.
Probably
Can you start
not.
that late in the process, or do you have to?
You have to request support right in your initial application.
So any changes in personal financial conditions could really threaten your future at school.
It could, but again, it all comes down to communication. Students have to let people know what's going on. Parents have to let students know what's going on. The sooner a concern comes up, the sooner a solution can be found.
One of the things that surprised me a lot when I came to Vietnam and started teaching was how rare it is for students to be working while they're going to school. Now, when I went to school, I worked through high school. I worked 2 jobs, one on campus and one off campus when I was in university. I don't see that too much. Why is it, and what's the workaround?
Well, it could be a lot of cultural issues, maybe the affluence of a particular family. The family has expectations that maybe the student's going to just focus on school and they can make that happen. So there's a number of things that can, be quite different than our experiences in North America. I think many students in the U.S. maybe have had part-time work in high school, and it's just a different cultural situation.
I think that this topic ties directly into the first one that we discovered in part 1, which was about organizing your time.
Yeah,
and so this is this is required if you're going to work while you're going to school. You must learn to organize your time. I think that's one of the greatest benefits of working while you go to school.
Forces you to manage your time better.
Actually learning that skill and also seeing what it feels like
to
wake up in the morning, be busy until the time you go to sleep.
Yep, exactly.
And I think everybody needs to go through this experience so they appreciate free time, if for no other reason.
Yeah.
How about creating budgets? Do students often do that, or is it not necessary because their parents do that for them?
Well, I know that it varies from country to country and different family situations. Some families will put students on a budget. They'll say, we're going to put X amount of money in your account every month. And then students have to figure out, living within their means. Some students may have a larger budget than others, and some students may have a part-time job. They can supplement their budget. And if students are leaving Vietnam and going to the United States, there's often work-study programs, internship programs that pay. There's part-time jobs. If they go to school in Canada, they can work more hours nowadays than previously. They can also work 40 hours a week during the holiday season or summer vacation in Canada, which is a recent change that helps take some of the financial burden off of students and families.
Well, your housing choice is going to have a lot to do with that too, because if your job is going one direction and your school is going the other direction, then you've got to account for that transportation time, for the cost of transportation, and for the inconvenience. So how does someone choose the right housing? How do they solve the ideal location, but within my budget? And some schools, I think, don't even have housing readily available.
Well, for incoming freshmen, at least in America, the vast majority of universities and colleges are going to require all freshman students to live on campus, particularly if you're an international student. Now, that could change depending upon the school as you become upperclassmen. Maybe during your junior or senior year, the option of moving off campus with a group of friends might become available. But again, it will depend on the location, the housing available in that particular community. Like some college towns, getting a house might not be that difficult, but then if you're going to NYU, can you really afford to live off campus? I mean, there's lots of things you need to take into consideration going to a place like NYU. There's a lot to think about and to work through. Again, your high school counselor for students at APU is the best resource to talk about this issue. And also for our students here at AUV, I mean, there's lots of housing right around our campus if you don't want to live here on our housing in the dorms. There's a lot of choices available, and we try to support our students in making sure that they pick safe housing if they're living off campus, housing that they're comfortable in, they feel secure, and also making sure that they have numbers of people that they can trust and ask for help for.
And one caveat, I think it's way okay to choose off-campus housing, at least after your first year. However, you need to be careful about, you need to really have a policy decision about how far off campus can you live. And you need to base that on both safety and transportation.
Right.
So these are things that need to be considered. And of course, you have to have a good roommate who won't distract you or mislead you.
Yeah,
and you need
roommates.
to call a spade a spade.
Yep.
If things aren't going well with a roommate, you need to get a new roommate.
Right. You need to have that discussion and part ways if it's not working out. And it doesn't mean you can't be friends. It maybe just means you can't live together.
So I think that we've covered some really important things today. And in conclusion, I would just like to propose that every issue has a solution. And even the big ones, if you break them down into parts, you can solve one of them at a time. So whenever you face a challenging situation, avoid letting anger and resentment dominate. Always look at the bigger picture. Conquer your problems by being organized and using the resources around you.
That's a great idea.
Remember that a successful academic life and learning how to manage it is going to spill over into your successful career and lifestyle management too. So be organized, make your time count, and thanks for coming to our show today.